ॐ सहना भवतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावतीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः.
Saint Germain is someone who, I'll tell the story from the beginning, indulge me. I first came across Saint Germain when I was very young in traveling in New Zealand with my mother, and my mum was always busy in meetings and she would leave me as a 15-year-old, and even younger than that, just doing my own thing for hours and hours and hours on end. And I was around somewhere in that age, 15, 16, still at school or just finishing the final years. And I was in a bookstore, a secondhand bookstore, waiting for my mother. And I found on the bookshelves these books, these all old books. And somehow I came across this. I was always a seeker searching for answers and meaning. And there were these old books that pulled off the shelf, and they were about palmistry and numerology and the vibration in names. And I was fascinated by all these things. So I was looking in this sort of esoteric section. And these books were by Saint Germain. My big regret is I didn't buy them, but I didn't have the money actually, but I stood in the bookstore and I read the pages as much as I could of these books. Something profound happened to me, that I felt not only the presence of Saint Germain, but I knew that these words, what he was writing, was absolute truth. And it changed my understanding in that moment that there is real meaning in the vibration of a name and in the karma print that's on our palms and on our face and in how we're presented, how we're put on this earth and how we present, that there's significance in that. It has meaning. And that if I can understand these things, then I can have an insight into this creation, But what fascinated me at the time was also Saint Germain writing and talking about, the bit I read was that your name has a vibration, and that's the vibration that goes out when people call you and talk to you, and that you put all the time everywhere. And so that's creating an imprint in the world. And so you should be very conscious of what name you have and everything, which later I understood more with the spiritual names and so on. But that stood out to me because I never liked my birth name. It never felt like it should be mine. My birth name actually translated meant island, like an island, just could be anywhere. I guess Australia's an island as well, big one. But Saint Germain stayed with me, his presence stayed with me from those books. And when I returned to Melbourne, I don't know much time later, but I was very sad in those years, because I didn't have a spiritual path or a spiritual teacher, and I felt very much disconnected and discontent with the world. And I hadn't experienced a lot of love actually in my family. So I was very alone. I felt like I really was on an island. And I started this practice where I would stand on the ground in my bedroom, and I had this special kind of medicinal, beautiful smelling herbal Moroccan face oil, it was called. And I used to rub it on my temples to bring me peace. I didn't know that time meditation. I was practicing some kind of affirmation thing every single morning. I hadn't learned meditation yet, but I was really trying to bring myself into a sense of peace and connection with something greater than this world, because I didn't find anything that made me feel safe in this world. And I was rubbing, I would put my hands here. My feet, I felt firmly planted in the ground, and I would call Saint Germain. Saint Germain, if you're real, Saint Germain, come. Because that was all I knew then. And he always was there. And so I started this practice every single day. I would stand with my feet on the ground, face in a certain direction, and put the oil here, close my eyes, and feel the presence of Saint Germain. And I felt Saint Germain. And I got so good at that I could call on Saint Germain. I didn't know what I was asking for. I was just asking for his light and presence around me and protection, I suppose, or just the connection. I wasn't even asking for anything. I just wanted something, and I could feel he was there whenever I called. Whenever I called, he was right there. It was a beautiful feeling. It wasn't just imagination. I felt different. It's a very soothing feeling. And I had kind of forgotten about all of that in the years that I went to India and I was traveling in India. And when I came back to Melbourne, after all these years away from Melbourne, Saint Germain came back to me. And I started reading the discourses of Saint Germain, the I am discourses of Saint Germain, which are phenomenal. And there is one man speaking them on YouTube. I think there's probably a few more now, but he had just uploaded them like about 4 years ago. Beautiful voice, like a meditation. And I listened to these over and over again. And it was like Saint Germain was coming back. And I was so happy. Here I was back in Melbourne, and there was Saint Germain. And Saint Germain represented to me complete freedom and knowing and trusting in the self. Not relying on external sources of wisdom or knowledge or anything, but relying on one's own God nature and God power, that everything, all the protection, everything that I need is with me now. Because we spend a lot of time, us humans, searching for things, all sorts of things. And this presence of Saint Germain to me was no more searching, that I am, and I can draw to me anything that I desire. It's not just to be free and not have anything. It's like, no, you can have everything, because this is also part of God. So it's just hard to put into words. And as I was really feeling the presence of Saint Germain, one day I heard, make a mala for Saint Germain. Make a mala for this energy, was actually what I heard. Make a mala to embody this energy. And I thought, great, that would be wonderful, but how? How does that come together? How does energy come together? And I asked, I said, Saint Germain, if this is a clear message from you, then I would like to know how to put this together. And so I was thinking about this, and I had it in my awareness. And then out of the blue, a couple of days later or sometime later, I heard lavender quartz, aquamarine, gold quartz, Herkimer diamond, citrine, I think it was. Lavender quartz, aquamarine, gold quartz, Herkimer diamond. And I was like, oh, okay, I just heard these crystals, and I sort of forgot it, because it wasn't like a linear thing, one step after another. Sometimes I have to step back from it all and put these pieces together. And so telling the story is like putting this piece together. When it's happening, it's kind of just unconnected things. And I didn't pay attention, and I heard it again about 2 days later, very, very clearly in my head. I heard the names of the crystals, just like names. And so I thought, okay. That time I heard it twice. I went and I sat down and I pulled the crystals out of my supplies of all the different crystals and put it together. And it came together very quickly. I don't sit and fiddle around and try to get it even and all this stuff. If I'm doing that, it's not an inspired mala. Normally I'm waiting for the inspiration and being in that presence, and then it just, boom, it appears together in the right balance and the right harmony. And I don't have to worry much about that. It does it itself. And that's what happened with this one. And I looked at it, all the different beads that I'd put out on my mat, and I thought, oh my God. At the time, years ago, I never had anything that colorful. I would not put together those colors. I wouldn't even think to put together those colors. Like, it's easy to look at it and go, oh yeah, that's pretty, But I wouldn't think to pull those colors out, blue and this yellow and the purple. Anyway, so I put it there. I sent the pictures off to source more of these crystals and start the process of making it. And as it was being made and coming to me, I decided to do a little bit of research into Saint Germain, a little bit more, because I'd never, other than reading his books, listening to his discourses, I never looked into him or anything. And I found these pictures online, and all of the pictures of him, you can look them up, are purple, blue and this yellow gold color, the same as the mala. And I'd never seen those pictures before. It sounds crazy. I didn't base this mala off those pictures. I hadn't seen those pictures before. I was only interested in Saint Germain as the presence, as the light, as the I am, as the feeling that I needed so much when I was young, that I'm safe and that I have with me all that I need, that I'm not, it's hard to put into words, but it was so much spiritual presence. And so when I saw these pictures of Saint Germain, I thought that's quite extraordinary. That I heard the same names of these crystals that are exactly these colors. So someone else has obviously seen or heard Saint Germain or something and has made those pictures, because they're not pictures of him. They're some sort of drawings or paintings. And then they talk about the violet flame and so on of Saint Germain, which I'd come across many times over the years, and different versions of that, which for me never really struck me as much as the pure I am presence that Saint Germain was talking about. So I was overwhelmed actually by how clear this came through to me, and how much it represented a similar message that others must have had, and how when I got the mala and the first person that put it on, I immediately saw white light all around them. And I said, I think you need this mala. And they took it, and now a little while later, a few years later, this woman, who's the first woman that wore it, is really in the light as a spiritual healer. It's like she's been able to clear with this energy all this muck that was on her, and recognize that I am a spiritual child, and that I'm here to bring that light and love to others. She's a very beautiful lady, and others as well. Another spiritual lady I know here. These are just a few I know well, who was starting her journey in Reiki, and is now very, very sought after, and always wearing a Saint Germain mala and in the light. You know, it's about, I am the light. I am. There is nothing else. I am. It's that presence. It's that real realization of I am. That's the Saint Germain mala, and that's what came through. And I just, so there's a story how it gets made, how it comes through me, how I connect first with that presence or that energy, and then how it happens, and then when it goes on to people who wear it, and what happens in their life and what happens for them. I just feel that I'm a conduit, really, of this energy reaching to people and reminding them of their own spiritual truth. And each person needs a different reminder. So the Saint Germain, here it is again. It's just these beautiful, pretty colors. When I wear this mala, I just feel happy. I just feel happiness and joy, and this it's a light energy for me that's really very, when you feel happy, you're not worried about anything. Life is good. Just go with the flow, and feel positive, and feel like a powerful being, but without all the thoughts. Just I am. So this is a precious mala. There are certain malas. There are many that really have a strong story, and I will never phase them out of the collection. They will be standard there, because they come from a much higher power, I think, and they're given to us as gifts if we choose to receive them, to connect with that energy. And there's some mystery in it, and there's not only the crystals combined together, it's extraordinary, just combining different crystals that really are harmonious, but also wearing them, connecting with their essence and energy, and being fortunate to have this beauty around. I love them. They're powerful. It's my experience. I've seen it.